Hi everyone, welcome to the Balanced Natural Health Podcast, where we share insights from the ancient science and timeless wisdom of Chinese medicine. Information from the old natural ways of healing can support us in leading more beautiful, more vibrant and more vital lives today. In this podcast, I share simple, natural and accessible tips that you can incorporate into your everyday life for more vibrant health and wellness. I'm so glad you're here. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Maz. Welcome back to episode 47 of the podcast. In today's episode, I'd like to share a different perspective on what makes us sick. Why do symptoms arise and why do we experience dis-ease? And why is it that some people seem to catch every bug, every flu or cold or gastro that's going around, and others seem to be totally fine? Or why is it that some people have asthma or allergies or reactions to mold or certain environments, whereas other people in that same environment or around the same triggers seem to be totally impervious to any outside input? So what is behind that? Now, if we think with our modern mainstream mindset, we might answer it's the immune system. But there are two things to consider about this answer, and that is that the immune system theory is just that. It's a theory, a working hypothesis that has some pretty major holes. So there's definitely some issues. It's not airtight, it's just a working theory. And the other thing to consider is that it is a relatively new idea, a relatively new construct that hasn't had the opportunity to be proven out over thousands of years, like the other view that I'm about to share with you. So the modern idea of an immune system is, say, 100 to 150 years old. And prior to that, we had a different idea of what makes us sick and therefore what we can do in order to cultivate vibrant wellness and also to look after our health preventatively. And this other view that I'm going to present to you is a beautiful contrast to the current view of the immune system, which has us constantly on guard, on alert, on defense for invisible baddies, for invisible pathogens and bugs and viruses, bacteria that are out to get us. So we always have our backup. Our nervous system is never truly at ease or at rest because we're in this militaristic mindset of being at the ready, of being ready to spring into attack or to defend ourselves. But this other view is actually about harmony, and it's about trusting the wisdom of our brilliant, brilliant beings, our brilliant body, minds, and souls. It's about trusting that we are so powerful to cultivate vibrant health and also to rebalance from whatever ails us, and also trusting in the power and the wisdom of Mother Nature and trusting in the power of connection to the web of life, to the natural world around us. Because the fact of the matter is that we are woven in to the web of life and we live in community and symbiosis with the world around us. And this is particularly true when we consider our own human environment. So you might have heard me or others talk about the idea of the microbiome. And this refers to the beautiful collection and living community of microbes, which are tiny little organisms like bacteria, yeasts, and fungi, and so on, that live in and on our bodies. So this is why people love selling probiotic supplements, because it's meant to make our microbiome healthier, but there's actually other ways to do that that are much more lasting. So this community of beautiful little friends is so vast and so richly textured and layered. And it actually, if we count the microbial cells within that whole community, they actually outnumber our human cells by a factor of roughly 10 to 1 by current estimates, which is pretty mind-blowing when we think about what is it that makes us human, what is a human, and when we consider that we as a human being are more microbe than human, we're more community than human. And yet, this modern militaristic view of being on guard and defending against invisible baddies has us killing microbes. It has us killing the very little helpers that are there helping us live and thrive and performing essential functions within our bodies. So when we're constantly at war with them, in a way, we're at war with ourselves and at war with connection with nature herself. Because the fact is that many of the bacteria or microbes that have been blamed for certain diseases and illnesses actually live in and on us when we're in a healthy, balanced state. So it's not about the microbes themselves as being baddies, but it's actually about the whole symphony of all of those microbes within the context of our human selves. So are they in balance? Are they out of balance? Are they coherent? Are they supporting life? And this is where doing war on microbes is not going to lead to thriving good health. Instead, we need to look at how we can bring coherence, harmony, and balance to our inner world and harmony to how we interface with the world around us. So, this other perspective that I'm about to share with you on why we get sick and how we can maintain vibrant wellness is not focused on doing war or fighting off invisible nasties or constantly having our back up, but rather it's about surrendering and having faith in the wisdom of our bodies and trust in the wisdom of nature and living in harmony with the world outside us and also living in harmony with the world within us. So that includes microbes, but it also includes all of our inner workings, mind, body, and soul, our emotions. So we'll get into that in just a minute. And this worldview that I'm about to share with you is the Chinese medicine view of health. And it is a view that has persisted for at least 5,000 years, if not longer. There's different opinions. It might be 8,000 years or more. And as such, it is the oldest surviving science in the world. And it is a science that still offers us powerful ways of bringing about balance, of bringing harmony and cultivating health in this modern world. So it has truly stood the test of time and it can be applied to the whole range of diseases and sicknesses that we experience as humans, whether it's body, mind, or soul. So let's take a look at what Chinese medicine offers us as to why we experience sickness and dis-ease and what we can do to maintain health. So, from our perspective, the things that can lead to dis-ease and suffering are fundamentally a loss of balance and harmony, a loss of connection and alignment to the living natural world around us because we are living beings and we depend on connection to the web of life around us to regulate our rhythms, to synchronize our flow, and to exchange chi and energy with as well. So, loss of balance and harmony, loss of connection, and fundamentally within our bodies, we are always looking for a balance of yin and yang, the fundamental polarity of this material existence, and also the flow of chi and how charged up, how abundant our chi is. So, are we well resourced with energy? And is that energy in integrity? Is it flowing everywhere it needs to go? Because this is how information moves through our body, how all of our vital functions and body systems get to regulate and optimize. We need to make sure that information or chi is moving freely through the body. So I like to visualize that we exist within a field of energy, of our own energy that interacts with the world around us. And our own energy has energy superhighways, which are the meridians or channels, but it also has microcirculation. So I like to think of it almost like a mesh or a weave. And when we have different snags in that energetic mesh or circuitry, then things don't move and information, vital substances, energy doesn't get to go to where it needs to go. So this is summed up beautifully in one of our ancient texts. It's called the Huangdi Neijing, or the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Internal Medicine. This book is over 2,000 years old, and this is what it says about the etiology, or the causes of disease. So it says that when the qi and the shen, so the qi is our life force energy, that charge that I talk about, and how well it's flowing and circulating. So when the qi and shen is our spirit, our consciousness, our present awareness, our spark of life. So when the qi and shen are present and sound, then no pathogen can invade a person, even when the cycles of nature are disruptive and plagues are near. And in this book, when they talk about pathogens, they talk about it in the literal sense of the word as it is intended, not as invisible baddies, but pathogen, meaning literally pathos, suffering, gen, so bringing about suffering. So this does not have to be invisible germs or anything like that. And also when they talk about plagues, they just talk about suffering as well. So we see very clearly how cultivating harmony within and charging up our inner energy can provide us a robust grounding to hold steady no matter what the outside world throws at us, whether that's physical, emotional, energetic, on any level. The more resourced we are within, the more we can hold firm and keep our center. So now we know what the ideal is. Now, what can disrupt that harmony, that balance between yin and yang, and that beautiful charge and flow of qi? So in Chinese medicine, we say that there are internal and external causes of disease. The internal causes are the emotions. So when the emotions, which are literally energy in motion, qi in motion, if they're not allowed to move and metabolize or alchemize through the body, then they will snag that beautiful network, that circuitry of qi, and they'll obstruct the flow. So maybe circulation will be impeded, maybe certain cells in an area or tissues don't have the information they need and they become deranged. They don't grow or multiply in the way that they should. They lose their coherence. Maybe we accumulate too much fluid in one area because there's not enough qi flow to keep metabolizing fluids there. So when we're suppressing emotions, or if we have stored trauma in the body as well, all of these things can impede the flow of qi. And this is why we have somatic practices in Chinese medicine. So qigong, which literally means energy work, is a somatic practice in which we move the meridians, move that energy network, and we include our breath and our intention. And when we work with these different meridian systems, we will titrate or discharge small, manageable amounts of emotions that are trapped. So before and after a Qigong session feels very different. We can move frustration, we can move heaviness or depression, grief, anxiety, ungroundedness. So by bringing harmony to that energy network of the body, we also over time bring harmony to our inner emotional state. And in Chinese medicine, we have a deep understanding of the different effects of different emotions. I've talked about this in other podcasts, but for example, we say that shock can scatter the qi, or worry can knot the qi, or anger causes the qi to rise up. So each emotion has a specific effect on the direction of qi, or on the tangling of it, or the dispersal of it in certain ways. So this is why making sure that we're, as I said, moving those energies out of the body. Also things like, I'm such a big fan of stream of consciousness journaling. This can be so helpful because it allows us just to witness the clutter that's in our body, mind, and soul, get it out. We get to verbalize it or write it down onto paper without projecting it onto someone else. So it's a pressure release valve on those emotions. And the more that we let them stream out of us, it's like peeling off the layers of an onion. We start to see actually there's other emotions or other energies beneath that. So that's one of the main internal causes of disease. The other is a secondary internal cause of disease because it's to do with lifestyle. So it stems from what the ancients would call improper living. And that means not living in a way that is in alignment with our brilliant beings, with how they desire to be cultivated. So that means having an imbalance of work or movement and inadequate rest or too much rest, and maybe foods that are distanced from nature, or non-foods even, like processed foods, seed oils, artificial sweeteners, chemicals, preservatives. These are not things that we are meant to digest. So they're going to snag our energy. They're going to contribute to blockages or damp, inflammation within internally. So these other improper ways of living can also be not dressing ourselves properly for the environment. So in Chinese medicine, we're such big fans of scarves and protecting our feet and covering our kidneys, so no crop tops when it's cold, because our bladder channel is our first line of interaction with the outside world. So this is easily affected by cold and wind, for example. So this is why we treasure and nourish that bladder channel, make sure it's warm and protected. So this would constitute an improper way of living that could allow cold to penetrate deep inside the body, where it can then interfere with different organ functions, leading to things like, for example, gastro, or what appears like food poisoning, painful periods, joint pain. The list is endless, and this is why we live in alignment with the outside world as far as protecting ourselves and what we wear. There's also improper living in things like bedroom activities or sex. So for men, excessive ejaculation can deplete the energy as well. So it's depleting that inner essence, which then means that we're less resourced within. And also a lack of connection to the outside world. This can also contribute to an internal accumulation of cold or dampness, or other things that obstruct the movement of qi and yin and yang in the body. Now, the external causes of disease are the six heavenly qi, because they're the six atmospheric qi. They're sometimes called the six evils, the six pathogenic qi, and these are weather or atmospheric environmental changes. So they're not germs, but they're more changes to do with the temperature and air pressure around us. So they are wind, cold, dryness, damp, heat, and summer heat, which is a particularly annoying mix of heat and dampness together. And of these, wind is the primary one. It opens the door for all of the others to get in, which is why we're always looking after that bladder channel, as I just mentioned, with scarves, and looking after our kidneys and making sure our feet are protected as well. So we say that wind is the spearhead of 100 diseases, and this is why we're always looking after the exterior of our body, making sure that there's good circulation there, that we're not cold, that we're not goosebumped. And this is why we are definitely not fans of aircon, especially on that bladder channel area, and also why we definitely don't sit in ice baths. So I've done a podcast episode on that, and also several posts if you're interested in learning more about that, because we are always revering in Chinese medicine the spark of life, the yang, the fire within. It's like the metabolic pilot light that allows all of our body functions and systems to operate optimally. And this is why we don't take in cold food or drink. We don't put ice on injuries. We don't ice bath, because that all steals life. You can't have too much yang. You can't have too much of that spark of life, that fire. And icing, taking in ice cream as well, it kills and dampens that vital spark. And finally, we have miscellaneous causes like trauma, poisoning, injury, and so on. So you can see that in this whole list of the causes of disease, we don't have any mention of invisible nasties, baddies, or germs, which is pretty eye-opening, isn't it? And it's also pretty empowering, because it takes us out of that position of fear and victimhood and feeling like we have no power to affect any changes on our health. And it returns us and reminds us to a state of empowerment where we remember that we have the power to cultivate our qi, to cultivate our shen, charge up our batteries so that we can remain balanced no matter what's happening externally, as our ancient text mentioned. So when our qi and shen are full, then nothing external can touch us. We are well grounded and well resourced within ourselves. And this brings us to the goal of Chinese medicine. And our overarching goal is always to bring harmony and coherence, to restore it where it has gone awry, and to restore flow and remove blockage and stagnation, and to cultivate and nourish our chi, our spark of life, so that we can always maintain our center, our balance, no matter what's going on in the world. So we are always focused about creating harmony within, with that flow of emotions, making sure that we're not accumulating pathogenic factors within, like cold and damp from cold and damp foods or indigestible foods, and making sure that we're also living in harmony with the outside world. So living in harmony with the seasons, with the daily cycle of yin and yang, day and night. So going to bed at the right time, rising at the right time, because this gives us important information. It tells our hormones what to do, it tells our whole body how to organize itself through the day, and also the same with the seasons. So aligning ourselves in harmony externally and internally. And so practically what this looks like are habits like managing our energy expenditure and our energy restoration. So energy in and energy out. So making sure that we're not overworking or underworking, making sure that we're having that beautiful balance of yin and yang. So we're always mindful in Chinese medicine of not frittering away that precious yang, that qi, that life force, making sure that we allow sufficient time for that yang to rebuild and recharge, making sure we get to bed by 9 p.m. ideally, and making sure we take rest. And on the flip side, also making sure that we are moving our bodies sufficiently, that our meridians are being flexed, and that all of our organs are getting massaged by movement, that our blood's getting moved through the body. So there is always in Chinese medicine a middle path of moderation. That is always our ideal. We're never about extremes, but we're looking rather at a middle path of moderation that is sustainable as a way of life for a whole beautiful, vibrant, and well lifetime. So as I mentioned, practically we are also aligning with the daily cycle and seasonal cycles and environmental factors around us, making sure we're attired properly. It's also choosing foods from nature and from the nature around us, so eating local and caring for our precious digestive fire, that precious spark of life, by choosing foods that are from nature, that are digestible, and taking those foods cooked and warm. So there's much more on this in the episode just before this one about how important it is to choose cooked and warm foods and drinks, and what a difference it makes to gut health, cognitive health, sleep, depression, anxiety, and a whole host of other presentations. It's also about allowing the free flow of emotions. And this doesn't mean spraying our emotions out on people, but it's rather about acknowledging that they're there and allowing them to move through our body, whether it's somatically or onto paper. It's also about beginning to befriend those perhaps neglected or suppressed or hidden parts of ourselves. So looking at what's behind our various bindings or addictions, limiting beliefs, and then integrating and embracing those. So we're bringing that yin and yang of self, that wholeness of self, bringing our shadows in, embracing them as well, so that we're not at war with ourselves within. And further on the topic of energy, cultivating health is also about being meticulous and discerning with our own energy within. So looking at that whole energy circuitry, and are we in integrity with what we think, what we say, what we believe, what we feel, what we do, because where we're not in alignment, it takes energy to hold that misalignment or that mismatch. So we're using up energy to hold that untruth. And instead, if we're in alignment with everything that we think, feel, say, and do, then everything's in harmony. It's like the whole orchestra of our being is in tune, and that amplifies our life force. Everything flows freely. Whereas if there's snags and kinks and hidden bits, then that drains our energy. So, for example, if we tell someone that we'd love to do something, but actually we really don't, then that drains our energy because we have to hold that tension, or we force ourselves to do something that doesn't feel good. Again, we're denying our own inner wisdom, and there's that betrayal. It's a double whammy because it's a betrayal of our own inner wisdom, and then we're also forcing ourselves to feel drained by being in a situation that's not in alignment. So this coming into ever greater integrity, refinement, fullness of self, coherence of self is such a vital part of becoming more and more ourselves so that we can hold our center no matter what goes on in the world. And other external ways that we practically cultivate our health are making sure that we're dressing appropriately, so not overdressing when it's hot, and also making sure we're protecting from cold and wind, especially wind, because it's the spearhead of 100 diseases, opens the door for all the other pathogens, and protecting our beautiful meridians. So again, scarves and keeping our feet warm. This one's also really important for women who have painful periods, or even people with back pain, hip pain, because the meridians that traverse the reproductive organs and also the back, hip, leg, knee, they all are connected. They come up from the feet. So if that meridian is cold and contracted at the very root, then chi is impeded. Energy doesn't flow as freely. So getting our feet in a foot bath, making sure we wear socks and slippers is also a really important aspect of preventative health and cultivating health. And finally, externally, we're about moderating extremes and always looking for that middle path as well. So again, protecting from extreme weather, protecting from wind, avoiding aircon, that's such a big no-no, and not sitting around in damp clothes, for example. And as I mentioned before, no ice baths or drafts or any of these externally disruptive factors. So to illustrate this view a little bit further, let's take a look at what being out of balance can look like. So for example, if we are eating foods that don't digest, or we're not nourishing our digestive fire, so let's say we're eating lots of smoothies and cold drinks, slushies, raw food, or maybe we're multitasking or skipping meals, then that precious digestive fire becomes really weak. So if we're not cultivating it over time, if we're not caring for it, it starts to die down. And this can lead to cold and damp internally because that food is not being digested efficiently. And so we end up with undigested food, which then festers and ferments into dampness, which is somewhat equivalent to inflammation. So then this can lead to chronic inflammation, body-wide inflammation, things like sore joints, arthritis. It can lead to congestion, cysts, bumps and lumps, all sorts of presentations. So the other thing also that can happen if we have not tended to our precious digestive fire is that then our digestive system can become easily overwhelmed. When we travel, for example, we might easily get travel bugs or barley belly, deli belly, whatever you want to call it. And also we might succumb to gastro, whereas someone who has tended to their spleen, to their earth element, to their digestive fire is going to be more robust and resilient to those external energies of cold and damp, and their digestive fire will be able to withstand that. So they might feel maybe mildly unwell or maybe a reduced appetite, but they're not going to have such a violent response necessarily. So it's really important preventative healthcare to look after that spleen, that digestive fire. If we consider perhaps what suppressed emotions or packed away trauma, unacknowledged trauma, or rejected parts of self, what they can do for our chi mechanics. What they can contribute to is what we call chi stagnation. So the chi is not moving freely through the body. And what we can notice here on a very minor level is like sort of sighing, someone who's huffing and puffing a lot, or maybe shallow breathing because they're armoring within, because a deep breath would actually contact them or bring them into contact with those feelings that they don't want to acknowledge. So we might have shallow breathing, and we might have maybe depression, we can have irritability, mood swings, anger outbursts. And because we're not breathing as deeply and completely, we're not pumping that chi, we might then get impeded blood circulation, painful periods, things like PMS or PMDD. So all of painful breasts, even with periods. So these are all related to the chi not moving freely. Another example is what can happen if we're not living in balance from a yin and yang perspective, and if we're maybe going too hard, running in yang mode and running down our life force energy, our spark of life, our chi. If we're doing that for a prolonged period of time, then we can start to deplete our yang. And healthy yang, we say it lives in the lower abdomen. So it lives between the kidneys. It's likened to our adrenal energy, our life force, our very essence. And it's meant to be consolidated and anchored deep in the lower body. But what happens when we keep running on empty and keep running on adrenal hormones, on stress hormones, is that that yang gets more and more depleted. And rather than sitting anchored deep within the body where it can warm us and mobilize us from within, that yang starts to rise and float away to the surface. We call this floating yang. And what can happen here are hot flushes. And this is why hot flushes are so common at that time that is called the perimenopausal time, because this represents a time in a woman's life where she has probably been running on empty a little bit, multitasking, looking after family and work, looking after others at the expense of self. So that yang can take a little bit of a beating, and this is a time to double down on nourishing yang, but instead that yang can float up. It makes us feel hot. And it can be tempting then to throw cold into the system, but actually this only exacerbates the issue because it dampens that poor little yang even more and pushes what's left of it more to the surface. So other ways that we can experience floating yang are things like anxiety, restlessness, like twitching, not being able to sit still. It can be insomnia, trouble falling asleep, racing thoughts, ADHD. All of these are symptoms of that yang not being grounded or not being steady and held deep in the body. So very important to know that the body will never call for cold. The body always needs more yang. You can't have too much life. So as tempting as it might be to go jump in an ice bath, what we actually need to do is look at ways of anchoring that yang. So one simple way that we do that is with hot foot baths, because they are hot and they're at the opposite end of the channel to where the yang floats away. And they bring that yang down while also boosting it a little bit as well. I also like to add Epsom salts to my hot foot baths. I love doing them before bed. They can be really deeply grounding. And in Chinese medicine, minerals and salts are deeply anchoring and grounding as well. So they can start to anchor that yang deep in the body where it needs to be. Another example also, if yang is depleted, then we are not full of it from within, which means that we can easily be affected by cold externally. And if our whole being is not full of that yang and that chi, then normally that cold wind would normally only affect the outer part of the body and we can kick it out. So a healthy person will be able to kick it out with a sneeze, actually. That's often why we sneeze in cold environments, because we're clearing the cold from the exterior. But if we don't have enough yang to keep us full and protect us from external cold and damp, then that can go deep within and we can end up with cold deep within the body, like deep cold in the lungs, for example. And then once again, we're looking to warm and nourish. And finally, another example that we can experience when we're not living in harmony externally, if we're disconnected from nature, from the web of life that we are forever woven into, then what we can experience is maybe a lack of circadian rhythm. So maybe our sleep wake cycle is out of whack because we're existing in artificial lighting. We're not getting those cues from Mama Nature, from the sun, first thing in the morning. They're very vital to get sunlight before phone light or artificial light in your eyeballs. It sends a lot of important signals. And this can also be behind things like seasonal affective disorder, so lack of sunshine, which is leading to mood changes. And things like earthing are so vitally important. There's so many studies now that show just how powerful earthing, grounding, getting our feet or body on the ground is, because it connects us to nature's rhythms. And it also has beautiful anti-inflammatory effects and other regulating effects on hormones and nervous system, and brings us in alignment with the world around us. And on that topic of connection with nature and the living web of life around us, there's some beautiful quotes from the Huangdi Neijing again. And one is that the qi of the body flows in accordance with the changes of heaven and earth. So we are always connected to the world around us, to the cosmos, to the earth beneath our feet. And the other is the reminder that every individual's life is intimately connected with nature. How people accommodate and adapt to the seasons and the laws of nature will determine how well they draw from the origin or the source of their life. So these are the practices and foundations for preventative health and for radiant wellness. And this is why I sometimes feel like a broken record on repeat, because when people ask me what to do for a certain symptom, the answer is very often the same, because whilst these dis-ease presentations or symptoms or sicknesses are very diverse, it's like they are the branches of a tree, but the root or the trunk is the same. So when we look after that inner and outer harmony, the balance of our yin and yang, making sure our qi is resourced, that we're nourishing our spark of life, and that everything is flowing, then everything else stems from there. And that is why when I look at all of these modern disease names in modern medicine, I actually see all the common underlying threads. So for example, like, is it ADHD or is it floating yang? Or is it hot flushes or is it floating yang? Or is it painful periods, or is it chi stagnation from unexpressed rage or frustration, which, I mean, is such a healthy response to a lot of what's going on in the modern world, or a lot of what we force our bodies into, our body, minds, and souls. Or is it gastro, or is it just that the stomach and spleen have not been tended to for decades, and now they can't withstand external input as robustly as someone else? Or is it asthma, or is it just a backlog of damp and cold within the body? So this is what I love about this Chinese medicine perspective on health, because it reminds us that we have the power, as the ancient text says, when our inner environment is resourced, when we tend to that, then health stems from their robust health. So I love this perspective because it reminds us just how powerful we are, and just how much we can do each and every day with every thought, every mouthful, every drink that we choose. Maybe we can take in some beautiful herbs. Each time we choose to speak or think or move with integrity, each time we honor our own impulses, and maybe each time we connect with Mama Nature as well. All of these things are adding to the piggy bank, the great resource of energy within us. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice I've had an outfit change, and that's because I needed to add this little extra bit to this episode, and that is that I'm going to do a part 2 in our upcoming episode on the next full moon after this one. And we are going to talk about what happens when we do manifest symptoms of dis-ease. We're going to translate what the body is doing. So for example, if we're having a chest infection and we've got green phlegm coming out of our lungs or out of our nose, if we're having a sinus infection, I'm going to share the Chinese medicine perspective on what's going on there. If we're having a fever, or for example, if we've got what presents as gastro, we'll explain what's going on there. And I'll also share the 8 therapeutic methods, the BAFA of Chinese medicine, and ways of eliminating imbalance from the body. So I hope that's been interesting, helpful, enlightening. Please feel free to share this with anyone else who you think might benefit from it. If you'd like more support and guidance in implementing a lot of these foundational rituals and health habits into your life, I have created the Radiant Energy Reset, which is available on demand. It's self-paced. It's got a whole lot of beautiful video modules and a gorgeous guidebook and a journal and a guided pathway to help you integrate a lot of these beautiful practices into your everyday, to understand what your body is calling for and to learn simple ways that you can bring balance back each and every day through the foods that you choose, the herbs that you might choose, the movement you choose. We've got some beautiful breath work and qigong, so energy work, meditation, acupressure points in there as well as ways to look after our psycho-emotional health. So it's a mind, body, and soul foundation for health. That's at drmaz.earth. I also have a mini offering coming out soon, which is looking at the coherence and integrity of our energy, our chi, our life force energy. You can also find me on socials. It's drmaz_chi on Insta and YouTube, and drmaz.chi on Facebook. So I'm always posting more of this beautiful wisdom from Chinese medicine on there. I hope that what we've shared today brings you some more lightness, ease, and liberation as well. And wishing you the very best of health and looking forward to seeing you in the next episode.